here are three problems. And this one is from chapter 2. And this one is from chapter 5.8, though we could also solve it using chapter 8 techniques. And this is from our current position in chapter 8. This is 8.6, 8.7 land. And it's the stats, reading off the stats of a parabola that's in vertex form. What I want you to do is to take this thing cold. I want you to pause the video. I'm going to put a little spinner on there. It'll give you some time to go down there and pause it. I want you to pause it and try and work these three cold. And let's see how your memory handles that. Okay, I hope you gave the three a shot. Now, if you remember, chapter 2, we were dealing with lines. That's where we got introduced to functions and lines and slope and whatnot. And we had the classic y equals mx plus b. That was a slope-intercept form. There was another line equation of a line introduced in that chapter, and it was the point-slope form. And there were two sorts of problems. We were either given a problem that was already in point-slope form and asked to read off a point in the slope, or we were given a point and a slope and asked to write it in this form. Well, this is the first form. I'm giving you one that's in point-slope form, and I'm asking you to read off a point and the slope. So the slick way to do that is, well, I'm hoping that you remember that this number, this slot right here, is the number that determines slope. And so the slope for this line is going to be m is equal to 5. And now the slick way to read off a point isn't to futz around with the formula. It's just, it has pluses and minuses in there that are going to, for sure, derail you. Instead, you just ask yourself, what makes this quantity here, what value of x makes this quantity 0? And the answer is negative 4. When x is negative 4, I get 0. And so essentially, I read off half of the point. I know when x is equal to negative 4, I get 0 here. And so, the game here is to realize that, well, when x is equal to negative 4, this is going to be 0, and 5 times 0 is 0. So this whole thing vanishes here. I just have a big 0 on the right-hand side. And so could you solve this equation, y minus 3 is equal to 0? Of course, y is going to be equal to 3. And so you now have your point without any trouble, really. I mean, the math there could be done in your head. The point is negative 4 comma 3, and the slope is m is equal to 5. So hopefully you got that one. It's not going to take too much effort to get up to speed on it, though. Now, the second one. This is actually, we were introduced to this in 5.8. We have a quadratic equation, and the question is, does it crack? If we can factor this trinomial, then we don't have to use a quadratic formula. And we're looking for two numbers that multiply to 15 and to add to 8. So I think you could see it does crack. It's plus 5 and plus 3. They multiply to 15 and they add to 8. And so we're able to factor this thing, and it looks like this. 5 and 3 multiply to 15 and they add to 8. And then it was the same game that we just used up here. We asked ourselves what value of x made this 0. Here we ask ourselves what value of x makes this 0 and this 0. And of course the answers are negative 5 and negative 3. And that allows us to write our answers in roster notation. That is just as a listing. X is equal to negative 5 comma negative 3. That's all I'm doing there, is simply listing the two solutions. And really it doesn't matter which one comes first when you're simply listing. Okay, now the third one, that's where we're at right now. Hopefully you're keen enough now in this section to recognize that this is a vertex in what's called, this is a parabola in vertex form. And it's very easy to read off the vertex here. All you do is just like we did here and up here, we ask ourselves what value of x makes this 0. And the answer is 4. And that gives us half the vertex. And it's the same exact game because look, when x is equal to 4, this is going to be 0, and negative 2 times 0 is 0, and all this is going to vanish. And so what is y equal to? Well, y is the left-hand side, so y is equal to 5. And so we can then say, well, the vertex is y is equal to 5, and we're able to complete our vertex as 4 comma 5. Then the question is, okay, well, does this thing open up or open down? And remember, that key idea there was the sign of the multiplier in front of this x quantity, squared x quantity. And if it was negative, it opened down. If it was positive, it opened up. Since this is negative, it is going to open down. And so there is the answer to the third problem. Okay, so that's a nice review, and I hope you did well on those three. On the final, I'm going to go back to some of the preceding chapters, but most of the material is going to be drawn from chapters 7, 8, and 9. And here are three things, though, that you will definitely see